They laughed when she dumped champagne on him. They cheered when she labeled him a fraud. But when the horse collapsed and his data revealed everything, the world turned because the man they embarrassed was Keanu Reeves, and he took the whole industry down to its knees. The morning fog clung low over Churchill Downs, like a veil set on concealing what was coming. Security was tight as it should be. The air was filled with turf and champagne, and the far-off hum of early arrivals stumbled along marble sidewalks behind gold ropes. But the figure waiting beside the side gate was not attired in mint juleps or million-dollar bets. His boots were worn, his jeans worn, his jacket a frayed brown affair that looked like it had better days. His badge was absent, his entourage non-existent, his rationale. A young security guard looked up from his clipboard and scowled. "Sir, this is restricted entry staff only." The man nodded slightly. "I'm not here for the party," he said quietly. "I just want to see the horses." The guard let out a breath that could almost be a laugh. "You and 1,000 others. You got clearance, a wristband, anything." "No, then you need to turn around." The guy didn't protest. He gazed beyond the guard, beyond the fences and glass, to where the stables bent like ribs across the horizon. Somewhere in there the horses lingered, not the million-dollar stallions trotted out for photo opportunities, but the unobtrusive ones, the hurting ones, the used and drugged and discarded champions. The guard shrugged, irritated now. "Look, pal, I don't know what you imagine this is, but you don't belong here." Another voice-cooler, female, unmistakably powerful, cut through the morning chill. "He thinks this is a petting zoo." The man turned as Veronica Langston stepped out from behind a velvet partition. Her white blazer glowed in the early light, her gloved hand cradling a champagne flute as if born there. She didn't walk, she glided. The crowd behind her parted like fabric. Cameras trailed after. Her eyes surveyed man as if he were a blot on her neatly ordered world. Churchill Downs is a tradition, a cathedral of restraint and beauty. And you. Her gaze ran over the mud on his boots. "You're wearing a field on your feet." A ripple of civil laughter roused behind her. The man did not blink. He merely said, "I'm here for the animals." Veronica cocked her head, smiling. "And I'm here to protect them from imposters." She lifted her glass and then, with elegant accuracy, poured its contents over his chest. Gasps, phones rose in the air. A few laughed, but the man remained motionless, soaking unmoved. "You've made your entrance." Veronica breathed close. Now make your exit." The guard reached out to touch the man's shoulder. He moved back by himself without struggle. His hands hung loose at his sides, no protest, no raised voice, but one glance over her shoulder to the stalls behind, to the ones who could not talk. And then silently, he turned and went away. But not far, not yet. By noon, the velvet floodgates opened, helicopters cut overhead, broadcasters sitting in glass booths above the grandstands, reading betting odds like scripture. The Kentucky Derby had officially started, not the race, but the pageantry, and at its glittering center stood Veronica Langston. She walked down the South Pavilion's marble steps as if they had been installed just for her heels. Her white blazer shone in the sunlight, fitted to precision. A blood-red silk scarf hung from her collar, billowing like a banner of victory. Each step brought the camera flashes nearer. Her smile was controlled, immaculate, never once cracking. Behind her, a reporter leaned over to his cameraman. "That's Langston Wright, chair of the National Racing Board billion-dollar farm in Virginia. Her horses win, her sponsors win, and no one dare say why." The cameraman muttered back. Veronica raised a gloved hand and waved, elegant, effortless. The media swarmed like bees to lavender. Then her eyes locked onto something out of frame. Someone across the wide lawn near the outside edge of the paddock fencing. He was still there, that same man, the one from before, mud still on his boots, his jacket still damp from her champagne. He stood quiet in the shadow of the stables, arms crossed, observing, not the crowd, not the show, but the horses. Her smile never wavered, but her gait did. She turned, crossing the green like a missile in white. 2 journalists trailed. As she approached the man once more, she talked prior to the cameras having even been able to catch up sufficiently loud enough for the people in the back of her. Still here was no one going to tell the difference between a track and a rodeo. The man did not respond. One of the journalists took his phone recording quietly. The audience, feeling there was a show, came closer. Veronica moved forward. Close, face to face, smiling for the audience. This is a private affair, a feast for achievement. We don't take charity cases. She groped at his coat and pulled off the animal research volunteer pin affixed to his lapel, obviously forged. That's not merely fake. That's insulting. She tossed the pin onto the floor and crushed it beneath her heel. The man's jaw wobbled but did not budge. His hands remained fixed at his sides. Someone in the crowd laughed. Another clapped. The video kept rolling. Veronica turned back to the audience, flourishing a gesture like a theater actress bowing out. Don't worry, folks. The animals are safe. No need to let the help pretend they're experts. She began to walk off the cameras, following her, but just before leaving the frame, she paused and turned. Next time, wear something clean. She smiled sweetly and disappeared behind a wall of publicists. The man stood alone in the trampled grass, shirt-stained tag broken. He didn't say a word, but as the crowd broke up, no one saw what he did next. He stooped down, picked up the broken tag, and stuck it in his pocket. The sun set low, casting long shadows across the back stalls of Churchill Downs. While the crowds cheered over champagne towers and parade hats, the back of the complex grew still, quiet, forgotten. Here the shining marble bleached into wet earth and chipping paint. Along the fence stood a line of temporary stables, their wooden slats groaning under weight and pressure. This was the section of the track no one photographed. It reeked of hay, iron, ammonia, of fatigue. A janitorial truck trundled past. No one noticed the man who got off it. Boots, dusty hat, pulled low, clipboard tucked under one arm. He walked with silent purpose, fitting in with the shift workers and night cleaners, his presence insignificant. That was the idea. He passed through a back gate effortlessly. No questions, just a nod. Inside, the horses stood in separate stalls, most of them too quiet for race animals. They had their heads down low, a couple of them twitched during sleep. He walked from stall to stall, gradually allowing his fingers rub the name plates. Most of these were not the winners in training. Horses, spares, backups, or aging veterans no longer in their prime. But when he got to stall 17, he halted. The sign read Victory Line. It was a familiar name. Second place in last year's, sold 3 times thereafter. Now back to a new owner. The horse on the inside appeared older than its years, muzzle scabbed from chewing on the gate, eyes red glassy. The man placed the clipboard under his arm and put his hand in his jacket. He withdrew a small, sleek instrument, little larger than a phone. Its screen glowed to life silently. He held the scanner just above the horse's shoulder, a set of colored bars aglow down the screen, heart rate up. Adrenaline surged. Traces of performance-enhancing substances, clear indicators of hormonal doping, not merely illegal, unsafe. He went on to the next stall, then the next. By the 5th, horse readings were uniform. Spiked stress levels, artificial chemical signs, secret injections along the ribs. Some horses had been loaded with stimulants so potent, they ruptured capillaries under pressure. It wasn't racing, it was slow poison. He scanned in silence. Keep data, no photos, no files sent, just raw capture. Then the final stall. The nameplate had been scratched off. No title, just a number, 004. The horse inside didn't flinch, it stood tight, foam dried at the corners of its mouth. The scanner slowed, come blinking yellow. The man reached forward carefully, slowing a hand along the animal's neck. Easy, he whispered. I know. The horse didn't jerk, but it trembled. He completed the scan. His eyes lingered on the number once more. 004, searing it into memory. Then he turned and went out the back through the muck and the quiet. The party still raged up front, but down here the truth was already seeping through, and tomorrow one of these horses would run until its heart collapsed. By the next morning, the celebrations had reached the height of fever. The opening ceremony of the Kentucky Derby was underway. Trumpets sounding flags, waving influencers broadcasting from balconies in pastel blazers and feathered hats. Mobs massed. Around the center stage, where the event's aristocracy mixed, like deities over a coliseum. Veronica Langston waited under the main pavilion. Her image projected on 3 giant screens. She provided scripted interviews, shook hands with billionaires, and grinned with teeth as bright as the roses surrounding the winner's podium. She was the Derby's face, and she was aware, so when one of her aides stepped forward and whispered, "The same guy from yesterday, he's still here by the equipment tent," her grin didn't waver. "Fine," she said, putting down her champagne flute. The aide attempted to keep up. Veronica brushed him aside. She walked onto the lawn cautiously, allowing her presence to command attention. Cameras swiveled. The crowd felt tension, something off script, and when they spotted the man in the mud-splattered jacket once more standing silently along a line of handlers, they turned like a school of fish. The man was not talking. He again held a clipboard in his hand, the same miniature gadget attached to his belt. Veronica skidded just shy of him and addressed him in a stage-whispering voice. "The press, the world, you again." She cried loudly enough to be picked up by nearby microphones. "What is it now? Did you lose your horse?" A little courtesy, laughter trailed from the crowd. The man gazed at her but remained silent. He did not move. He didn't run. She stepped forward, waving grandly to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, our unwanted guest returns and he's dressed the same, either a minimalist or persistent." Laughter grew louder. Veronica turned back to him and pointed to the clipboard. "That's a mock volunteer tag, and this," she grabbed the little scanner from his hip. "This is not approved equipment. Who are you trying to impress exactly?" He said nothing. She held the scanner in front of the cameras. "Let this serve as a lesson. Anyone can purchase a lab toy and pretend to be saving the world, but this is the Derby. We don't do drama here." With a flick of her wrist, she tossed the scanner onto the ground, and the device cracked on the turf. Gasps. The man's jaw clenched, just scarcely, his fists curled for an instant, but still, he remained silent. A security guard came up behind him. Veronica nodded. "Escort him off the grounds politely." As the guard moved to take the man's arm, the crowd shifted forward, but the man shook off the hand and turned and walked away on his own. He didn't glance back, didn't utter a word. One camera recorded him bending to scoop up the busted scanner as he departed. He held it tenderly, like it meant something. That fleeting and unnoted moment would be a frozen frame, later a pause, in time, the pre-storm last gasp. "Still with us? Type yes in the comments below to let us know you're here." The sun was at its peak over Churchill Downs, scorching the grass to a blazing emerald. The action was about to begin. Betting lines froze. Broadcasters craned into microphones with the seriousness of surgeons. In the jockey circle, the horses were being led into position, muscles tense, coats shining. Cameras closed in on number 7, familiar to betterers as razor wind, smooth black, unbeaten. There were few who knew that earlier that morning there had been a stranger quietly standing by its stall. From the VIP suite, Veronica Langston took in the scene with the detached coolness of royalty. Champagne in one hand, she listened as her PR assistant droned on with talking points. 3 of the top 5 are Langston trained. If Razor Wind wins again, we'll have our legacy headline before sunset. Veronica's eyes didn't flicker. "He'll win! He always does!" Down on the track, the bell rang, the gates slammed open. 12 horses exploded forward in a blur of limbs and thunder. The fans rose to their feet, voices crashing in a stadium-wide din. From the first turn, Razor Wind was in front, not by a nose, by 2 lengths. Then 3 jockeys urged on harder, but none could fill the gap. The black horse swept around the track as if it were chasing spirits, its hooves just skimming the ground. "That's not normal," one trainer grumbled in the press booth. At the end, Razor Wind's speed picked up once more unnaturally. Its sides jerked, foam erupted from its mouth. Its rider looked down in confusion. The horse hit the finish line first, then just 6 seconds later, before the cameras could even switch away, it fell. Dead weight, legs twisted under its body, blood sprayed from its nostrils. The jockey was thrown, but scrambled up yelling for help. The horse convulsed once, then became still. A scream came from somewhere up in the stands. Announcers fell quiet. Veronica gazed at the television in front of her, the color draining from her face. Medics ran onto the field, but the quiet in the stadium was more deafening than the ambulance siren. Fans gazed around at each other with apprehension. Phones were held aloft, not in jubilation now, but in confusion. Horror. Something was amiss. The main jumbotron, usually showing replays, suddenly cut to black. Then a low hum buzzed through the loudspeakers. It wasn't part of the program. A new feed appeared, grainy, unfiltered, the image of Razor Wind seconds before collapse, and then data live biometric readings, heart rate spikes, blood oxygen drops, elevated stress hormones. Not from today, from days before the race. A voiceover followed. Calm, computerized. This data was recorded using unauthorized third-party biometric equipment. Evidence shows pre-race doping in line with prohibited substances. Veronica remained motionless, her hold on her glass tightened. The PR assistant next to her leaned over and whispered, "Who leaked that? Where is it coming from?" Nobody replied. The feed cut once more, but before it did, a logo faded in at the bottom corner, KR Bioanalytics, and in an instant, the world viewing the Derby started to change. The screen flickered black. For an instant, the hush at Churchill Downs was not shock, it was bewilderment. Then the questions poured like far-off thunder across the pavilions. What was that? Was it real? Did they just confess doping on live television? Up in the main pavilion, Veronica Langston clapped her glass down on a mirrored table, breaking the stem. She addressed her staff voice, sharp enough to cut air. "Discover who viewed the feed. I demand names now." Aides scrambled, phones rang, texts from the control room barked over radios, but no one had answers. The internal servers indicated no breach, no evidence. And yet somehow every screen, every display, from the betting lounges to the private lounges, had borne the same data stream. One thing was certain, it hadn't were coming from within, down by the press pit. Journalists started to mobilize. One woman, mid-30s, with a press badge clipped on her jacket and a shaking in her hand phone, playing over the video she had succeeded to screen record. Frame by frame, she worked over the biometric graphs. Her eyes opened up at the final seconds. KR Bioanalytics. She blinked. The title rung some kind of familiarity. A hasty search corroborated it. KR Bioanalytics, a quiet research project established 3 years ago, famous for creating high-precision scanners employed in animal welfare surveillance, financed quietly without corporate affiliations, no media visibility. Until now, she scrolled to the board of directors, one name, Keanu Reeves. Her breath caught. She stood, raising her phone into the air, voice loud above the rest. "It's him," she yelled, "the man they had ousted. He's the owner of KR Bioanalytics." Dozens gasped. Some stared blankly. Others gasped. A man in a gray suit let out a low whistle. "You're telling me they embarrassed Keanu Reeves on the world stage, then he shamed them in their own arena." The story started to smolder. By the time security went back to Veronica's suite to break the news, it was too late. The internet was already in the grip of clips of her, ridiculing the mud-covered trespasser, now coursed together with slow-motion shots of the horse falling. Side-by-side reels caught fire like a flame. Commentators who'd been singing her praises an hour earlier now did so hesitantly. Did Veronica Langston knowingly permit performance-enhancing drugs in her stable? Was this man a whistleblower muzzled on Derby Day? Her image once perfect, unblemished. Torn in real time, Veronica stood by the window while dozens of press cameras looked back at her pavilion. This time they weren't concerned about her hat or her horses. This time they demanded blood. Somewhere in the background, unseen in the melee, Keanu wandered the edge of the fencing by himself. His device was damaged, his jacket was spotted, but his eyes were calm. The screen did not require his voice. The information had spoken, and the world for once had listened. The tale spread like fire in dry grass. By the end of the hour, KR Bioanalytics was the #1 trending term on all major platforms. News anchors struggled to keep up. What had begun as a small hiccup at a horse race had evolved into a full-blown scandal with international spotlight, and at the center of it was a man the world believed they knew, a man who never said hello, a man who never fought back. But I had been watching the entire time. In a downtown Louisville newsroom, reporter Naomi Patel was still trying to wrap her head around what she'd confirmed minutes before. Her screen showed side-by-side photos, one from a charity gala 2 years ago, Keanu Reeves standing alongside a veterinary scientist smiling quietly in a dark suit, and one from the racetrack this morning, champagne-soaked head bowed under public mockery, same eyes, same man. She clicked publish headline. He wasn't a trespasser, he was the founder trying to save the horses. The article went viral in 20 minutes. By mid-afternoon, major outlets picked it up by sundown. Veronica Langston's phone wouldn't quit ringing, and she wasn't returning calls anymore. Inside the Derby press room, the atmosphere changed from glamour to crisis. A hastily convened panel with race officials became an interrogation. Questions were no longer about winners or purse money. They were about ethics, about health code violations, about cover-ups. A reporter leaned into his mic. Did the board have knowledge of the hormone injections? A stunned official responded, "We don't comment on ongoing investigations." Another wanted to know, did Ms. Langston sanction these practices? Silence. Then the photograph screens displayed footage from mere hours before Veronica showering champagne on Keanu Reeves, ripping off his volunteer sticker, laughing as security dragged him away. These were not just images, they were receipts, and the public was witnessing protesters converged at the track gates with signs proclaiming racing abuse and let them run clean. Petitions online had topped 200,000 signatures within less than 2 hours. Veronica sat alone in the VIP lounge drapes, drawn screen off. The ice in her untouched drink had melted away to nothing. She tried to rationalize it. He was just an actor, just a face. But the truth had another script. Keanu hadn't appeared for attention. He didn't require a stage. He'd constructed the one beneath their feet. In a quiet interview issued that evening, pre-recorded from months ago, Keanu's voice spoken over soft images of retired racehorses in green fields. "When you love something that can't speak for itself, you have 2 choices," he said. "Walk away or stand there and speak anyway." And speak. He had not in words, in data, in blood, in the fall of a horse who should never have run. And now the whole world was listening. The boardroom at Churchill Downs had never been colder. 12 members sat silently, their nameplates shining in the recessed lighting. Reporters were not yet permitted inside, but rumors leaked quicker than any headline. Veronica Langston sat at the head of the table, blazer-pressed lipstick still intact, but her eyes normally sharp. Unblinking, flitted from face to face. A legal advisor cleared his throat. "We have more than 400,000 signatures calling for your resignation. 3 big sponsors have already withdrawn. Another simply froze all purse disbursements." Veronica didn't flinch. "Temporary backlash. They'll get over it." "Razor's autopsy reveals otherwise." The room fell silent. He went on. "The report indicates synthetic beta agonists sufficient to induce cardiac stress in a healthy adult. We have 3 additional horses exhibiting similar biomarkers." Someone in the far distance muttered, "Jesus." Another chimed in, "Do you know the broadcast reached more than 20 million viewers prior to its being censored?" A veteran member leaned forward. "Veronica, did you give them permission or not? Your reputation is now linked with everything the public wants to burn to the ground." She reclined, jaw clenched. They loved me yesterday. Yesterday, you poured champagne over a whistleblower and taunted him on camera. He snuck in. He blew open a system. We let you operate freely. The gavel banged down on the table with a silent finality. Effective. Immediately, Veronica Langston was suspended from all responsibilities, subject to federal investigation. A formal notice would be issued. A press release would go out in an hour. There would be no appeal. She rose slowly, hands shaking just short of the edge of the table. "Do you think this makes any difference?" she asked. Voice sharp. "Do you think one man and a busted scanner rewrite the way this industry works?" Nobody replied. She left alone. Outside, the wind had changed. On the screens in the stands around the track, the Derby show had been switched out by a different message. This event is subject to ethical scrutiny. Thank you for waiting. In the stands, fans trickled out in silence. No music, no parades, no photographs, only mutterings, only shame. 3 of the leading teams were officially under investigation. Their trainers had fled the premises. One was arrested while trying to board a private jet. Another was met by federal agents outside his trailer. In Washington, a senator publicly called for hearings into cruelty in sports. An ethics panel was announced before sundown. Animal rights groups, long marginalized, were suddenly center stage. Their leaders cited KR Bioanalytics as the new gold standard for humane enforcement, and behind it all was the man nobody had recognized, nobody except the horses. By evening, the grandstands were deserted, but deep in the back fields, close to the bottom of a quiet pasture, Keanu Reeves walked alone with a stallion that had weary eyes and a new bandage over its ribs. The horse walked slowly, but standing upright. Together, they vanished into the tall grass, out of the limelight, as the empire behind them collapsed one headline at a time. A week later, the gates of Churchill Downs opened again. But the air had changed. There was no fanfare, no red carpets, no drone flybys or orchestra intros, just silence and the creak of creaking hinges. As people entered through a new type of entrance, it opened up to a garden. There, in soft morning light, stood a bronze statue, not of a champion, not of a jockey, but of a horse in mid-collapse, legs buckled, head dropped. A plaque at its base read, 04, for those who couldn't speak. During the dedication ceremony, there were no speeches by celebrities, no flashing lights. Just one man stood next to the memorial, dressed in the same old boots and a worn-out jacket. Keanu Reeves laid down plain wreath at the feet of the statue. Next, he spoke to a cluster of school children in the crowd and said quietly, "Racing is meant to celebrate strength, not take advantage of it. And dignity isn't gained from winning, it's gained from how we treat people who can't say no." No press release was issued, no TV commercial. But the moment lingered in whispers, in repeated video clips, in tears, suppressed by trainers who had once averted their eyes and now looked inward. Subsequent to that month, the Kentucky Derby announced a series of sweeping reforms, a permanent ban on all hormonal doping, mandatory biometric scanning before and after every race, the creation of an independent body for equine welfare oversight, and finally, the introduction of the Dirt Walker Foundation, a nonprofit that focuses on guarding aging and mistreated race-age horses. The name of the foundation was not coincidental. It was a tribute to the man once ridiculed as, us says, an intruder, a dust-covered and quiet man, a man who had been ridiculed, then exposed as the force of change. But Keanu never came back to the public eye. He didn't do interviews. He turned down awards. Instead, he just kept appearing unobtrusively at small stables, country clinics, underfunded rescue centers. To the rest of the world, the tale became myth. To him, it was simply unfinished business. A month later, a letter materialized on KR Bioanalytics' site. It was signed only KR. It said, "If you care about something that can't speak for itself, your silence can kill. Systems don't fall by violence. They fall by truth and by witnesses courageous enough to speak, "I see you, I won't turn away anymore." The next time you witness cruelty disguised as tradition, ask yourself, would you race if it shattered you to triumph? Let mercy transcend legacy. Now your turn. If this story impacted you, don't let it die here. Would you stand up for the voiceless? Drop a comment below with, "I hear you," if you think dignity exceeds trophies. And forward this story with someone who continues to believe silence is neutral, because occasionally the loudest revolutions start from the quietest.